This was about November 4th when this officially passed, which is the new marketing rule, and really understanding what this means for firms and advisors with respect to advertising. And the one thing, and Franklin, I'll turn this over to you, but the one thing I do want to just relay here that I think is really interesting is that the SEC actually redefined, when they proposed this new rule and when it came into effect, the SEC actually redefined the term advertising. And now advertising actually covers pretty much anything related to communications regarding securities, both to clients as well as your prospects as well too. So any type of communications, whether that's email, digital, print, you name it, has to be archived. There has to be a record of that somewhere for you to evidence for the SEC. And so I think that's a key takeaway, but it's what else should firms be mindful of? Because this is such a new change to the way just they have been operating. I mean firms, in particular registered investment advisors. It's such a change to how they've been operating their business models. And now this feels like an additional new step, but maybe it doesn't have to. Right. And so, what can firms really do here, both Franklin and Daniel?
Actually, it's interesting to bring this up. I think, advisors are and reps are different, because an advisor operates on a fiduciary perspective, which implies the reason why I would buy Salesforce Financial Services Cloud, throwing an example, is because Salesforce Financial Services Cloud has that householding data model to integrate into. So that's where we kind of found you guys, and seeing a lot of advisors from Baylor and others that say, hey, listen, I'm going to use FutureVault as my core true single source of truth. And then let's bring that pieces of that over into Salesforce. And, the householding feature is super important. And this is part where I'll turn to Daniel, is when I saw, Daniel, you guys had that patent and that visualization tool on householding, I thought, my God, this is exactly what the advisors need, because perspectives matter, right? The lens matters. And for a rep, I'm going to look at the world as an account. I'm going to look at it as an annuity. I want to talk to you about this particular product or structured product that I think is going to be great for you, regardless of your entire financial plan. Don't care about that. Financial advisors say, I look at the whole big picture. I need that household view. So when I saw, Daniel, your company's platform on that, I thought it was really interesting. So I was curious, talk a little bit more about that, because I think it's incredibly valuable for the industry.
Yeah, no, good point. So the whole idea is the holistic view of the relationship. And to Kristian's point about, okay, again, this is back to our thesis that regulations change. So these regulations need to be mapped into a firm and into practice and operating procedures. And so when you're looking at it from the holistic advisor perspective, that event of, let's say, talking about a new product or a prospectus or whatever that particular action may be, before that might not have been an auditable action or event, i.e. you wouldn't have to prevent that in discovery or show that in discovery. Changes like this mean that, okay, my business rules have to change. I've had this touch point with a client. I need to evidence and memorialize that I've had this interaction with a client. And that could be, again, here's the scenario portfolio analysis. And there are tools out there that do that. But it's now the ability to say, okay, right-click, memorialize. So that then gets captured in a vault. So when the audit happens, you can say, look, we had these different, you're almost like you're reconstructing the timeline. That we've had these 3 or 4 discussions. Here's the corresponding evidencing documents that went with that discussion. And I can stitch together that whole interaction with a client. And that helps protect the client for taking on risks that they may not be suitable for. And also the firm and looking at, okay, we're following this new regulation. And we know we can evidence it, again, as real time as possible. So as regulations change, just like this one, how was my tech stack changed? How would my procedures changed to adapt to this? Sometimes it might not be material, but sometimes it is material. Sometimes it means I need to change my operating procedures for an advisor to say, okay, when this happens, you need to right click, send that, memorialize that into a vault, or you automate that. You automate the memorialization of sending out that new prospectus, sending out that new proposal, and that also gets copied into a vault type construct, and you're covered. So again, synchronizing regulatory change with your procedures and policies and the tech stack. And that's where we come in. because these things are going to happen all the time. And it's about protecting everyone, the investor, the broker dealer, the RIA, et cetera, protecting the whole industry.
Yeah, I agree with that statement too, because if you think about it, and this is something that I have really more of a question, and I pose it really as an industry question. It's a lot of these advisors have evolved over the last 5-6 years to become pseudo family offices, or they say they're multi-family office because maybe they have 10% of their clients that's a mega ultra high net wealth, that's a qualified purchaser by definition, and they are marketing to them alternative investments versus say the other clients that are not say qualified purchasers, but they are really less marketing them alternative investments. But then you argue as a fiduciary, every 55-year-old, every 60-year-old with the same investment policy statement is kind of all the same. So it's kind of a question of what did you market to the super high net wealth guy that technically, isn't really protected or doesn't need that much quote unquote protection from the general rule for the general population. And let's say that alternatives went sour, the NAVs have gone down dramatically in this environment. And you go on a look back basis for that RIA that has gotten into that alternatives game for better or worse to accommodate the client, because that was part of their value proposition. On the look back basis, to your point, Daniel, the broad industry question, even on my side, is how have you protected yourself against that? What was the initial perspectives and the subdocs and everything that you have presented to that 10 million, 20 million, $100 million family, and all of a sudden that investment is now worth $0. So, what did you do?
Yeah, exactly. And as you say, it's when a buyer market hits, when there's volatility in the market, that's generally when these issues emerge. And so you don't want to be on the back foot. You want to be able to, again, adopt these new practices that align with the regulatory change. Is there for a reason to protect the investor and the market and ensure that you're compliant and the business rules around that. If my risk profile is this, and I'm selling a product that sits out of that risk profile and the rules around it, like that there's an audit trail that says we've sent a product out with a risk rating of this to a client with a risk profile of that, and it's not reconciled. Well, that's a rule, that's an event that can drive a compliance officer to come in and say, look, maybe we shouldn't be doing that, and make sure that everyone's following the new rules. So that's exactly right. When the tide comes out in a market like this, you want to be able to have and prepared for evidencing the conversations, the audit trail, the discussions, and to have that again in as much as a real-time environment as possible.